It's been a terrible week for Tottenham Hotspur. 2 defeats in the Premier League against Manchester United and against Newcastle. But boss Antonio Conte has come out and said that we need time, patience and money to compete. Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all keeping well. This is another edition of Spurs in the Media, where I'll be going through all of today's newspapers, looking at all of the articles and the player ratings from the game. Tottenham Hotspur 1, Newcastle United 2. So what a poor week, what a dreadful week it has been for Tottenham Hotspur. Defeats against Manchester United and Newcastle United in the Premier League. We remain third in the Premier League table. Now 4 other games took place on Sunday afternoon. Aston Villa 4, Brentford 0, Leeds United 2, Fulham 3, Southampton 1, Arsenal 1, Wolves 0, Leicester City 4. As I stated, Spurs remain third in the Premier League. We have now played 12, we have won 7, we have drawn 2 and lost 3. We have a goal difference of +9. We have 23 points. In the game against Newcastle, Antonio Conte went with the 3-5-2 formation. He made 5 changes to the team that lost against Manchester United 2-0 on Wednesday. The team was as follows: Hugo Lloris in goal, the back 3 of Sanchez, Dyer and Lenglet, the wing-backs Sessegnon and Emerson Royal. In midfield, Skip, Basuma and Bentancur, and then the front 2 of Heung-min Son and Harry Kane. Antonio Conte made 4 changes in the game. Perisic coming on in the 61st minute for Sessegnon, and then in the 66th minute, Lucas Moura came on for Oliver Skip, and then in the 81st minute, a double sub, Davis and Doherty coming on for Sanchez and Lenglet. So Tottenham Hotspur 1, Newcastle United 2. Now Newcastle took the lead through Callum Wilson in the 31st minute. Of course, lobbing goalkeeper Hugo Lloris from outside the area after Lloris come running out of his box, tried to clear it, failed to clear it, and then Wilson put Newcastle 1-0 up. Newcastle doubled their lead just 9 minutes later in the 40th minute through Almiron, gliding past the Tottenham Hotspur defence and then putting the ball past goalkeeper Hugo Lloris. There were boos at half-time from the Tottenham Hotspur fans, but Spurs did get back into it in the 54th minute through Harry Kane. Heung-min Son corner, flicked on by Lenglet and then headed in by Harry Kane. But that was it. Spurs 1, Newcastle 2. So the match stats: Tottenham Hotspur had 52% possession to Newcastle's 48%. We had 17 shots to Newcastle's 13. Shots on target, 5 apiece. Tottenham Hotspur had 6 corners to Newcastle's 7. And fouls, Tottenham 12, Newcastle 6. Now, of course, we all knew that Richarlison and Kulusevski would be out of this game, but it was quite a shock to a number of Tottenham Hotspur supporters that Romero and Højbjerg were not in the starting 11. Antonio Conte said that they had minor knocks. He's upset about the injury situation. This is what he had to say after the match.
Yeah, for sure, this type of situation make me frustration because I'd like to play this type of game also in Champions League with the best team, and then to have on the bench 3, 4 or 5 good substitutions, and not to try to invent situations, you understand? And but we knew this, and when I spoke to you before, and I always said, look, we have just started the process for Tottenham to bring Tottenham in a best position to be more competitive, to fight for something important. We have just started, and for this reason, we need to cope with this situation. For me, it's not easy, it's not simple, but we have to cope, to manage this situation with experience, and to stay together, today I don't have a complaint about the attitude, the desire, the will of my players, because every single player performed. The attitude, the effort was really, really strong, really big. But sometimes it's not enough. Tonight wasn't enough to avoid a loss.
So let's go through today's articles from the national press and player ratings. I'm going to start with the Daily Express today. On the back page, it says smash and grab, showing this picture of Callum Wilson with Hugo Lloris. It says Wilson blames Lloris for collision as Toon go fourth. Callum Wilson insisted that Tottenham goalkeeper Hugo Lloris had only himself to blame for Newcastle's opener as Eddie Howe's men surged into the top four. It then goes on to say that the Magpies took the lead when Lloris raced outside his area and chested the ball, only to plough into the on-rushing Wilson, who then lobbed into an empty net from 25 yards. Spurs were fuming, however. Wilson said, "I had every right to go for the ball. The goalkeeper was challenging and I was challenging. I really think sometimes goalkeepers get too much love from their referees. He chested it and dived into me, really, and I've carried on and put it in." Now for a double-page spread from the Daily Express today, it says Lloris, load of strife. A lightning flash, thunder rolled and the heavens opened. Newcastle climbed into the Premier League's top four for the first time in more than a decade. It then quotes Antonio Conte saying, "We're not a top team that can lose important players. I was very clear in the summer, if we want to play in the Premier League and the Champions League, you need to improve the squad." Also in this report, it highlights Hugo Lloris's mistakes and says blunders from Spurs goalkeeper helped give Toon top four joy. The player ratings from the Daily Express today: Hugo Lloris a 5, Sanchez a 6, Dyer a 6, Lenglet a 6, Royale a 6, Bentancur a 7, Basuma a 6, Skip a 7, Sessegnon a 5, Harry Kane and Heung-min Son both with 7s, Perisic a 5 and sub Lucas Moura a 6. Personally, I think those ratings are very generous. Now for a report from the Daily Telegraph, he's got this picture here of Newcastle celebrating, and rightly so. They performed extremely well, and in my opinion, they deserve the win. It says here on the front of the Daily Telegraph sports supplement, angry fans turn on Conte. Supporters boo Spurs after Lloris's 2 costly blunders. Wilson and Almiron helped put Newcastle into the top 4. Also in this report, it says Antonio Conte blamed Tottenham's 2-1 defeat by Newcastle on a strange goal, but refused to be drawn any further on the error by Hugo Lloris that put his side behind against their newest rivals for a Champions League spot. Later on in the report, it says on a challenging day for Lloris, his loose kick indirectly led to Newcastle's second goal. Asked if wayward distribution from his defence and goalkeeper was a cause for concern, Antonio Conte focused instead on his mounting injury issues and said, "My only worry in this moment is that we have to try to keep our fingers crossed and don't have injuries." Now for a report from the Times newspaper, it says here on the back page, Antonio Conte, "We lack depth to compete. Newcastle see off Spurs after Lloris howler." Antonio Conte admitted that Tottenham Hotspur lacked the squad depth to compete for silverware on all fronts this season after his side lost to Newcastle United. Also in the Times newspaper today, it says here, Howe's pretenders become real contenders. This was one of those special occasions when Newcastle United fans singing in the rain, winning at the Lane, could look with pride from back to front for so many players rising to the occasion. Also, it states here, Antonio Conte, "I need 3 more transfer windows." Antonio Conte has admitted that Tottenham Hotspur do not have the squad depth required to fight for silverware on all fronts this season. Also in the Times newspaper, Antonio Conte is quoted in saying, "But this is not something against the club. We knew this situation. I spoke with the club at the start of the season. I said we have to go step by step, time and patience to have 2-3 transfer markets to bring this squad to be competitive to play 2 important competitions like the Premier League and the Champions League." The player ratings from the Times newspaper today: Hugo Lloris 5, Sanchez 6, Dyer 6, Lenglet 7, Emerson Royale 6, Bentancur 7, Basuma 7, Skip 6, Sub Moura 6, Sessegnon 6, Sub Perisic 6, Harry Kane an 8, and Heung-min Son a 7. Now for a report from the Daily Mail today, it says here, Toon's storm warning for Big Six. Howe steers upstart Newcastle into top 4 with win at Spurs, and it's a lightning bolt to the league. And it also states here, Antonio Conte praises Spurs' attitude despite loss. Antonio Conte grumbled about poor finishing, injuries and the fixture schedule as a second straight defeat undermined Tottenham's start to the season. It's been a damaging week for Antonio Conte's ambitions, but he refused to criticise his players, instead praising their character. He said every single player performed. The attitude and effort was really strong, and sometimes it is not enough to avoid a loss. Before they scored, I've seen only one team. It was Tottenham, and Nick Pope made 2 or 3 amazing saves. And now for a report from the Daily Mirror, and what a heading this is. Hugo Dross. Hugo Dross, 2 gaffes from Lloris, and Wilson insists he has only himself to blame as Super Toon climb into the top 4. In the double page spread from the Daily Mirror today, it says 4 Toon favours the brave, while Spurs were distracted about VAR calls. Newcastle got on with it and produced a gutsy display to move up to 4th. Now, the player ratings from the Daily Mirror today: Hugo Lloris a 5, Sanchez a 6, Dyer a 6, Lenglet a 6, Royale a 6, Bentancur a 7, Basuma a 6, Skip a 7, Sessegnon a 5, Harry Kane and Heung-min Son both with 7s. Now for a report from the Sun newspaper, it says on the back page here, how's that for starters? Eddie Howe's Champions League spot. Eddie Howe challenged his Newcastle stars to stay in the Champions League hunt after beating rivals Spurs. Now, in the Sun newspaper today, it gives a couple more stats. It says passes. Tottenham Hotspur completed 455 passes to Newcastle's 407. Touches in the opposition box. Spurs had 22. Newcastle had 31. It also gives another stat here. Tottenham dropped points in a Premier League home game for the first time since April, which of course was a 1-0 home defeat against Brighton, with this defeat ending a run of 8 consecutive league wins there. Now for a report from the Guardian newspaper, and on the back page of the Guardian today, it says we can beat anyone. Eddie Howe housed Newcastle after blunting Spurs. Newcastle climbed into the Premier League top 4 after winning 2-1 at Tottenham, with their manager Eddie Howe declaring we can achieve special things with this group. Also in the Guardian newspaper, it says here, sky looks the limit as Newcastle's might stuns sorry Spurs. It then goes on to say that Tottenham's place in the Champions League positions as best of the rest behind Manchester City and Arsenal is becoming precarious. Antonio Conte's attempt to freshen his team after a midweek no-show at Manchester United fell flat against an aggressive, organised opponent and one with genuine quality. Now, I just want to mention the player ratings because looking on the BBC app this morning, Heung-min Son got the best player rating from the BBC app, 4.99. Harry Kane, 4.58. Bentancur, 4.36. And this is out of 10, by the way. Oliver Skip, 3.86. Basuma, 3.85. Lucas Moura, 3.82. Sessegnon, 3.72. Davis, 3.51, Doherty, 3.58, Perisic, 3.45, Dyer, 3.44, Lenglet, 3.42, Sanchez, 3.30, Lloris, 3.19, and Emerson Royale, 2.51. Now, the player ratings from the BBC app and the website are actually generated from ratings that the fans have actually submitted. But as I said earlier on, I feel that the national newspapers have been very generous with the ratings of the Spurs players in that game against Newcastle. They've actually given better ratings for the Newcastle game for the players than some of the games where we've actually performed extremely well. Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do hit that subscribe button, like and share. And if you're listening to this on an audio platform, please do hit that follow button and leave a review if you can. And I will see you on the next one. Until then, come on you Spurs.